Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Vimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine Namaho Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Vimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Gauravani Pracharine Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Astacharishatarine Namaste Saraswate Gauravani Pracharine Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Astacharishatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gauravakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gauravakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Landaneshwara Ki Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru Varanga. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Being locked down at the lotus feet of Shri Guru Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru Garanga. Hare Krishna. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinami Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Pastachade Shatarine. Hare Krishna. So Padmanabha Prabhu, are you going to speak something? I don't think he's there. Are you there? Are we there?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the lovely kirtan. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning. And especially for Maharaj for taking the time out to speak to us. We're very much looking forward to the talk today. So just some quick points. Maharaj requested that questions are preferred in writing in the chat. So if you can please use the chat facility and Maharaj will be able to pick the questions up. Also, if you're unable to use the chat, then you may need to unmute yourself to ask the questions. And yeah, that was it. And just again, thank you, Maharaj, very much for joining us. So I'll hand it over to Maharaj now to start the seminar. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I spoke with Kornitai. He suggested that we come out of the Wi-Fi from the temple and connect to the phone. He says it's more stable. The Wi-Fi in the temple sometimes drops. We can make a fast change.
We'll do this, and if that doesn't work, we'll do that.
Okay, we keep going there.
Hare Krishna. We welcome. We're very happy to be with you this morning. Welcome you all. And thank Padmanabha Prabhu for hosting today's program. From Radha Parasishwar, Radha Landaneshwar, we're very close. And we have a very close connection, and we're in Paris today. So we hope that our internet will maintain stability. It's been a bit up and down today. We're hoping for the best. If something goes wrong, we'll probably try to shift. You'll have to give us a few minutes to shift to another system if something goes wrong. But we're hoping it will be okay.
In my phone, this is 66. Here is 11.
So today's topic, what is the title? I've forgotten. Is it lust is a must or is lust a must? Which is it? Is lust a must or is lust a must? Not much difference, huh? I think for most people in the world, it's lust is a must. And for the devotees, well, we'll leave that up to you. We don't have a means right now for finding out. But whatever it is, either title will do, because there's more to lust than meets the eye, as they say, at least as we say. So today, this is our topic, and we'll try to begin. I guess we should first of all, I suppose most of you know me, to some degree, coming originally born made in the United Kingdom, and I've been kind of wandering around for the last 20 years or so, from here to there, and mostly the last few years I've been stuck in France a lot of the time. But whatever it is, we were fortunate to meet Srila Prabhupada in London. In those days, we were in Bury Place in 1972, when Prabhupada came to London for the Rath Yatra festival in London, in Trafalgar Square. And it was there that many of us devotees in London received Diksha or initiation from Prabhupada. I won't go through the names, but many of the devotees, even some of the devotees who are still there in the UK, serving in the UK, were initiated then on Trafalgar Square. And it was a very memorable occasion, of course. So since then, we've been somehow or another associating with Prabhupada's movement. I can't say that I've made any progress of significance, because Mr. Lust, I suppose, has been I've been far too friendly to Mr. Lust over the last 50 years. Mr. Lust is more than just some sexual infatuation or lecherous behavior or something. He's quite an expansive character, to say the least. So let's talk a little bit about what we understand. Who is this, or what is this lust which we hear about? I mean, if we start off in basically, we could say that the foundational verse of this subject matter would be found in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And many of you are very familiar, at least with the theory or the nature of this verse. We may not have yet imbibed it in our lives very seriously, or seriously enough to become free of this influence. And as you may know, in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking a lot to Arjuna about performing his duty according to the Varnashram system, conditional duty. Krishna. Well, because Arjuna was actually thinking of, changing, giving up his Svadharma according to his position in Varnashram. He was thinking, let me go away and become some kind of a goody-goody. I'll go to the forest and meditate. This fighting business is not good stuff. So he thought about leaving, but Krishna didn't really agree with that. The whole 3rd chapter is dedicated to trying to explain to Arjuna that that will not work. He will be the cause of sinful reactions, etc., etc. And then Arjuna, well, then why is it, Krishna? Arjuna said, why is it, Krishna, that we sometimes act in sinful ways? Then you're calling this a sin. We act sinful ways, even though it's more or less, even though it seems to be against one's will. So what does Krishna say? Well, you probably got it in front of you by now. 337 or something, I think. Yes, 337. When Krishna says to Arjuna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world." Quite a powerful statement by the Lord. The all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. And when we say this world, we don't just mean this planet. We're referring to basically speaking, the material universe is. Everybody under the all-devouring sinful enemy captures us all. Lust only. It's a pretty big subject matter, and a pretty hard subject matter to, let's say, overcome or deal with. So let's look at some of the definitions of lust. We could look at some of the present day religious perceptions or understandings of what is lust, just to get a little idea what we're dealing with. In the Christian church, Christian generally, and of course there are so many different branches with their own different perspectives, but in principle, the biblical understanding is based largely on a statement in Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, which states that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. And so it takes it a little bit beyond just the physical act, but rather an internal one, or let's say a subtle one, in his heart. Now, depending on how far and what we define the heart as, but in principle, this understanding has been imbibed by the general English-speaking countries which have a Christian tendency, and lust is therefore, in most cases, referring to sexual, unbecoming sexual desires, specifically, as it says also in Islam, where that sexual desire is also generally related to the meaning of lust, but it's lust where sexual desire is outside of marriage. Whereas within marriage, of course, it can be there too, but generally outside of marriage, particularly in not exclusively, but particularly in Islam and in Christianity, it could be in or out, but it's mainly related to sexual, let's say, unrestrained or unbecoming sexual desires, forcing oneself on somebody or whatever it may be, or just cultivating these type of things within our own heart. So that's something, some understanding of lust, no doubt about that. Actually, the original term, interesting enough, the English word was originally a general term for desire, originally. It's become a little bit, maybe a little bit more specifically used for sexual interaction, but originally it was just a general term for excessive desire. In the original Greek, and that refers also to the original Greek writing of the Testaments, it was a general term. It wasn't specific, just generally to set one's heart upon a thing, to be focused on a thing, to be very eager, or to covet, to long for it, to aspire for it, to desire for something. These would all come under the bracket of lust. So it wasn't necessarily such a kind of like a, this kind of term which is like overwhelming. But at least it doesn't sound like that, does it? But it is. It's used in verse. It clearly had nothing to do with sexual desire. The word lust was used for all kinds of subject matters, and specifically in the old writings and the old commandments, it was to covet, to dwell on something, to kind of like, to absorb oneself in something, to aspire to attain something. And there is a verse in the ancient scriptures: "You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, or his field, or his male slave, or his female slave, or his ox, or his draft animal, or any animal of his, or whatever belongs to your neighbor." Treat your neighbor as yourself, type of thing. And so it refers to just about anything which is unbecoming, which doesn't belong to us, and we start to aspire for it. And that was considered to be lust. And in Judaism, it refers to man's misuse of the things which the physical body needs to survive. Misuse of things. It's not just using things, but misuse. So you can see there's kind of like slightly different variations. And it's interesting also to note that during the course of history, during the Roman times, the word was related to luxuria, which nowadays is called luxury. And luxury isn't necessarily a word which is related to lust, but it refers to, living a life beyond one's needs, overindulging in various acts of, let's say, high living, and not just sins such as sexual extravagance would be included, but it could be extravagance for anything whatsoever. Could be anything. In Buddhism, lust is the attachment to or identification with passionate desire for certain things in existence, all of which relate to the form, sensation, perception, mentality, and consciousness that certain combinations of these things engender within us. So it's a little bit more sort of philosophical, let's say, a little bit more kind of wordy understanding. And they consider it as the ultimate cause of imperfection and the most immediate cause of suffering. Those are just some of the perceptions. Dictionary definitions of lust, which follow those lines more or less. And I'm not saying which dictionary, it's just a combination of dictionaries. I have an intense desire for something. Powerful feeling of wanting or need, to crave for something. So you can see that can be applied to anything. You could be craving right now for something. It might be, sleep, it might be food, it could be some possession, it could be a person, it could be whatever. Name and fame. Lust in the Wikipedia, I think that's what you call it. Lust is a psychological force producing intense desire for an object or circumstance, fulfilling the emotion which, while already having a significant other or amount of the desired object. In other words, something you've got already and you want more and more. Lust can take any form, such as the lust for sexuality, love, money, or power. It can take such mundane forms as the lust for food, as distinct from the need for food. So that distinction is very clear there between lust and love also in most, not just religious definitions or descriptions, but in general, that, between lust, which is generally understood to be simply satisfying one's uncontrolled urges, and love, which is supposed to be an emotional relationship with someone else, which is a give and take scene, supposed to be. However, all these various definitions, be they what they may, are all based on material analysis and totally material approaches, very mental, physical analysis without literally zero understanding of the root or even that which is, who is being lusty, or what actual lust actually means in its real form. No reference to the soul or the soul's intrinsic nature, basically speaking. It's just as if it's some kind of external thing, not even understanding in its relationship with the modes of nature, nothing. It's just an external thing which you have and you don't have, or you have to more or less degree, and it's interpretable what counts as lust and which doesn't. There's no clear understanding. It's just some ideas, some basic broad understanding is there on the material platform, but nothing deep. So if we look at the Vedic system or the Vedic understanding, we'll get a little bit more specific about what lust really is, how it interacts, how it affects us, how to deal with it. So we would like now, before we start really, to ease up a little bit. Let's have a little bit of maybe an icebreaker if you're if you're in Antarctic. I don't know if anyone in Antarctic is joining us today, but maybe someone in the Southern Hemisphere is feeling the cool weather down there. So let's have it's probably freezing cold anyway. I wouldn't be surprised if it is, even in the middle of summer. So let's have we like to introduce you to a character, a very good friend of mine, and his name is, are you ready, Rasikananda? Are you ready? Rasikananda Prabhu is in Wellington. He's our co-host today. I hope he's there with us. Are you there, Rasika?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, so we'd like you now to please introduce us to our good friend, whose name is Dracula. Fire away, here he comes. You may have heard of him. He lives in Eastern Europe somewhere, but he's come to join us today for our little session for a few minutes. And here he is. No, he used to live in Transylvania, but he moved to Amsterdam. And here he comes. He's with us today, I hope. Is he coming?
Oh, honey, when you are near me, I'm in the mood.
notice you've got such a beautiful voice.
Oh, my lovely one. You are such a feast for the eye. And what to speak of the tongue?
Of all the senses, the tongue is the most voracious and difficult to control.
But my dear, how can you speak to me of control when the mere sight of you fills me with lusty desire?
It is lust only, which is the all-devouring enemy of the world.
But my dear, you misunderstand me. I feel a profound attachment to her.
Of course! While contemplating the object of the senses, one develops attachment, and from that attachment, lust develops.
You make me so angry I could bite you!
Yes, from lust, anger arises. From anger, delusion develops. From delusion, bewilderment and memory. And when memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when one loses his intelligence, one falls down from the spiritual path. You see, it's a very risky business.
If anyone's taking a risk, my dear, it is you. Obviously, you don't know who I am.
Obviously, you don't know who you really are.
I don't know who I am. Preposterous. Let me tell you then. I am Count Dracula of Transylvania, Prince of Darkness.
Obviously, you are in darkness, for only an ignorant man considers the body as the self and his place of birth as worshipable.
You think that you're so smart, huh? Then, if I am not Count Dracula, who am I?
My dear sir, your human life has just begun.
Human life? Please do not insult me. I haven't known human life for over 500 years.
Never mind that. Atato Brahma Jigasa.
A tomato what?
Atato Brahma Jigasa. That is Sanskrit, and it means that human life actually begins when one asks himself, who am I? You see, you think you're this body, but your real identity is that of spirit soul, full of knowledge and bliss, and eternally connected to the Supreme Lord in an intimate relationship of love.
Love? Me?
Please understand, in contact with your material body and this material world, your eternal love for God has been transformed into mundane lust. If you don't give up this blood-sucking business, there is a very good chance that in your next life, you'll take birth as a mosquito.
A mosquito? No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
But why? But how?
Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail.
But I have never even considered such things before.
But you must.
I see that now. Somehow or other, by your good instructions, I am feeling somewhat meek, humbled.
These are not my instructions. They are the words of Lord Krishna to Arjuna, as given in the Bhagavad Gita as it is, by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada.
Ah, put that book away. Its light is hurting my eyes.
Yes, Godhead is light, and ignorance is darkness. Where there is Godhead, there is no darkness. But you are wrong to think that this book will harm you. Rather, it will relieve you of all the misery of material existence, even your desire for blood.
But my desire for blood has not been satisfied for 500 years. How can I purify such a strong desire as this?
My dear sir, it is the arrangement of the Supreme that we drink the blood of the cow after it has been transformed into milk, the miracle food. And from this milk we make butter and ghee, in which we cook wonderful preparations like samosas, puris. But the real test is in the tasting. Here, try one of these.
No.
Go on, it won't bite you.
I'm the one who does the biting around here. Remember? All right, give it to me.
Good, isn't it?
Absolutely delicious. Give me more.
Just one. But if you want more, you have to come to our Sunday feast, where you can eat to your full satisfaction.
Is the recipe for this in that book?
No, the recipes are all in this one.
Thank you. That looks tasty.
And this is the book I mentioned earlier.
Oh, Bhagavad Gita as it is. Never was there a time when I did not exist. It sounds like my Uncle Vladimir. How much do I owe?
Oh, just give what you can.
Will 100 do?
Oh.
No, keep the change.
Thank you. Now, don't forget the Sunday feast and bring your friends too.
Well, I'll be there for sure. But as for my friends, well, maybe another Sunday.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Excellent. I'll see you on Sunday then.
Bye-bye. Hey, Mommy, Wolfie, Uncle Vladimir. I found somewhere great. We can go for a bite on Sunday.
Hare Krishna. Well, I hope you're still there.
Oh, such
If
wonderful.
if you didn't catch it, that was our dear godbrother Paravida Prabhu, with one of his many excellent presentations of Krishna conscious philosophy and not just the philosophy, but the execution or the practice of the philosophy. So even Dracula can become transformed. We may have a Dracula mentality sometimes. Many points were there in that presentation, of course, from Bhagavad Gita. What happens to us when we leave our body? We may justify our behaviors according to our so-called religious paradigms or our so-called social laws or whatever. We justify it by what we think is right and wrong. But that doesn't, let's say, protect us from the reality or how the laws of nature work. One who's overwhelmed with lust is, as we saw in the case of Dracula, in his case is extreme. He's very much attached to the drinking of blood. So the young lady, I don't know her name, I've forgotten. She's explaining there how whatever state of being you remember at the time of death, that state you will attain without fail. And we see in our modern society that even many births, childbirths, are very much resulting from lusty interactions, uncontrolled sensual interactions. So we're going to go now a little bit before we get into the crush, let's say the essence of the subject matter, a little bit to the Bhagavad Gita. We've already heard the famous verse 437. I'm just going to read a little purport to, to 337. Now a little purport to 339 from the Bhagavad Gita. In the material world, this is Prabhupada's purport to 339. In the material world, the center of all activities is sex. And thus this material world is called Maitunya Agra, or the shackles of sex life. In the ordinary prison house, criminals are kept within bars. Similarly, the criminals who are disobedient to the laws of the Lord are shackled by sex life. Advancement of material civilization on the basis of sense gratification means increasing the duration of the material existence of a living entity. In one sense, we could say lust, which we'll talk more about in a minute in terms of how it comes about, but is the cause of our perpetual repeated birth and death in this material world, because we're attached. As we see in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, another pretty famous verse, 262, there Krishna says to Arjuna, while contemplating the objects of the senses, one develops attachment. From attachment, lust develops. And from lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. And these two, especially lust and anger, are considered to be the all-devouring sinful enemy of the world, which keep us locked up in this Maitunya Agra, this chains, literally Maitunya Agra, the chains of sex desire. And even if we take sex as being the definition, we will go a little bit deeper into what sex is as we go through the presentation a little bit, and how to get free of those chains which are binding everyone in this world, almost uncontrollably, unknowingly, in ignorance. People plow on. From anger, Krishna says, complete delusion arises. And from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down into the material pool. This is the result of being controlled by lust. And lust comes by contemplation. So we can go back a little bit, let's say, to the living entities being in this situation in the material world, where we are influenced by not just lust, but many other factors, other influences are there, but lust is at the root in this material world. But we can go even further back, which we have seen that others don't even mention, what to speak of, understand, of the nature of the living entity, or our nature, our actual nature of the living being, the soul. The nature of the soul is, we're all part and parcel of Krishna. We've all been, let's say, we all emanate, we've all come from Krishna. So we do possess, as a spark of the sun possesses certain qualities of the sun itself. We possess certain qualities of the Supreme. And to make it very simple, amongst those qualities are Nanda, bliss, knowledge, and eternity, the nature of the living entity. The bliss, which is inherent or a part of the characteristics of the soul, Nandamaya Sat, we're pleasure seeking. The living entity, by nature, the living entity is pleasure seeking. And consequently, I think we're offline. Online. Consequently, does this mean I'm online? Okay. Consequently, wherever we're situated, we're always trying to experience these characteristics of the soul. It's our nature. It's natural for us to aspire for eternity, knowledge, and bliss. In the material world, in the spiritual world, wherever it may be. And that's our nature. The living entity also has another aspect, which is our free will. A certain amount of free will. And that free will, in simple terms, is affection or aversion towards whatever situation we're in. So whatever the reason is in terms of detail, whatever a situation is in terms of our locale in transcendence, Prabhupada mentions many times the cause of our being in this material world is misuse of our intelligence. That is understood, at least from Srila Prabhupada. A misuse of our intelligence is when the aversive aspect of the soul, aversive to Krishna. Sometimes we call that envy. Sometimes, although envy is, in one sense, is applicable in this material world. But in terms of the soul's free will, aversion towards Krishna, and by Krishna's arrangement, when the soul is determinedly averse to devotional service to Krishna in whatever form, then the Lord arranges to fulfill the endeavor or the desire at that stage of the living entity to experience existence separately from Krishna, which basically means seeing oneself in the center. So these are back, you could say, to the roots here of our being overwhelmed by lust in whatever form, whatever way we understand lust. It can be taken specifically or generally, but the root is back to the free will of the living entity. The material world, Prabhupada says, exists only because of the desire of the living entity, and consequently Krishna's will, of course. Nothing can act without Krishna's will, but Krishna's will to create this material energy, to manifest this material energy with the influence of the three modes of nature, is based upon the will of the living entity, the desire of the living entity. So then the living entity placed under the influence of the material energy, under Maya, under the three modes of material nature, according to our association within those modes, we respond accordingly. Every individual has its own unique nature and also its own karma as we sojourn through the material world, through lifetime after lifetime, and consequently react to the modes of natures in different ways and interact with each other in different ways, causing more karmas. So the living entity comes into this material world, and because our nature, Nandamaya Sat, we are an enjoyer. So without relationship with Krishna, which we'll talk more about later, without relationship with Krishna, our relationship is thus in this world of darkness. In other words, we're placed in ignorance of our true identity. We start to think of ourselves as being a material, individual material personality, a body or mind, subtle or gross form. We start to identify with the material world, and the material body is the self, or the mind is the self, and the material world is mine, my place. So in this way, the living entity becomes very attached to this material environment and the body in which he's interacting with the material environment, subtle and gross. And consequently, because of that attachment we just heard, the influence of the mode of Rajaguna, the mode of passion, grows or expands, increases, because of our attachment there, the mode of passion, which is already there, of course. We're first in the mode of ignorance, and then in contact with the objects, the mode of passion, because of our attachment to the object, starts to increase, and we become very much implicated in the situation we're in. We very much want it, thinking that this, if any of you have got children, I'm sure many of you have or have had children, you can see, we were yesterday on Sankirtan, the day before yesterday, watching some of the children. There was one play shop just in front of our Kirtan party, and children running there, I want this, I want this, I want this. They think that that will satisfy their senses, maybe for a short time. The nature of the material world is like that, of course. We only get a very short fulfillment of that lust, is satisfied for a few moments. We'll hear more about that later. But this lust, according to our scriptures, according to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, according to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, according to all of our acharyas, lust means attachment, basically speaking. It's a very general understanding, a general attachment to one's personal sense gratification. It's wholly and solely about trying to satisfy our eternal constitutional need to feel pleasure. And there's nothing wrong with the constitutional need It's just you could say the direction in which we're trying to fulfill that need, which has to be adjusted. It's not the actual desire for happiness, the desire for pleasure. It may be selfishly centered, but in of itself, it doesn't have to be. But it's the nature of the soul to feel satisfaction. In this material world, why? Because birth, death, disease, and old age are constant factors of this world, and other living entities, and our karma, of course, as well. The modes of nature constantly changing around us, according to karma. And consequently, other living entities also having a different perspective of the same situation. Our endeavors to achieve that constitutional satisfaction are always frustrated in this world. And consequent anger is a result, because we're frustrated. We're not getting what we want. And it's not surprising. Therefore, a wise person doesn't get so disturbed. He understands that people are not getting what they want, therefore they're angry. They may identify with some religious process or some philosophy or whatever they identify with, but the fact is that they're not satisfied. We get angry when we don't get what we want. This is just one aspect of not being satisfied. So this goes on. And well, some people may say, well, really speaking, I'm not lusty. You know, why are you talking about this lust? I'm not lusty. I'm a good person. I live a good life. I don't, you know, I do things properly. And many people think like this. The Prabhupada says, anyone who is in the material world, he is lusty. Anyone, even a mosquito, an ant, everyone is lusty. Maybe different degrees, Prabhupada says. That doesn't matter, but he is lusty. As we see in the Bhagavad Gita in the 3rd chapter, Krishna talks about that, you know, as different levels of consciousness, different degrees of lust are there, you know, the embryo, dust, the mirror covered by dust, the embryo covered by the womb. Like this, different degrees of lust are mentioned there. But lust nonetheless, just because it might be in the mode of goodness, that doesn't mean it's not lusty. We're still wanting to enjoy ourselves for my personal sense enjoyment. This is lust. Kamesha Kodesha Rajagun Samubhava. Everyone is trying to lord it over material nature. That is lust. Lording it over our family, lording it over our subservient, those who are subservient to us, lording it over the energy around us, whatever it may be. This is all due to lust. Now the ant is trying to lord it over material nature in his own way. And the big politicians trying to lord it over nature in a different way. Everyone is trying. Lording it over the material nature is a sign of lust. You can take it for granted that anyone who is within the material world has the contamination of lust. Everyone. So don't think you're alone. Even Lord Brahma, even Lord Shiva, when they're interacting with the material world, sometimes the influence of Rajagun gets the better of them. Prabhupada says, everyone has come in lusty desires. We've come with these lusty desires and greediness. It doesn't seem like it, but the root is there, and that root is our aversion towards Krishna, which means I want to be the center. I want to be the enjoyer. If we look at our lives, we'll probably find a lot of problems we have are because we're seeing ourselves in the center, and with our, let's say, conditional perspective. We approach others and we approach the world around us. And consequently, we get angry when others don't go along with us. We can probably analyze it a bit like that. Prabhupada says even demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, Brahma became attracted to his own daughter. Lord Shiva became mad after Mohini Murti, because she was Krishna. But still, the principle was there. Krishna's teaching a lesson, even if you're a very great personality. This attraction, especially to the opposite sex, when we come to the pinnacle, we could say, of lusty intent in this world, is to try to enjoy the opposite sex through sexual relationship. Perverted reflection, perverted reflection of the spiritual realm, which we'll hear about a little later on. What to speak of insignificant creatures like us? Lusty desire is there. That is the material world, Prabhupada says. That is the material world. Simply a place where people are unknowingly, that every activity that we do in this material world is what's the word? Is pervaded by lusty intent. Everything, even so-called welfare activity, everything is pervaded by lusty intent in the material world. There's no choice, because we're seeing ourselves in the center. Now, of course, we're in our Krishna consciousness movement. In one sense, this is the basic root transformation, is to change, or to how to deal with this lust, how to deal with this seeing myself in the center as the enjoyer, as the proprietor, as the controller, and so on and so forth, as friend within this material world. We're trying to imitate Krishna. We know there's no peace there. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explained Bhaktaram Yagatapasam Sarvalokam Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gathamam Shantim Vichati, that those who understand things really for what they are. So knowledge is one thing, very important to have this knowledge, which we've just seen in that nice drama of Paravita Prabhu, how the lady there, she was giving knowledge to even to Dracula. Of course, it's a drama, it's not as easy as it sounds usually, but she was giving that knowledge. We have to give that knowledge to ourselves as well, don't forget. We're the ones who really, if we can't conquer over lust, we don't rise above lust, the all-devouring sinful enemy of the world, then how can we help anyone else? We can't really. So it's imperative that we as aspiring devotees, we try to see how we're going to genuinely become freed from Maitanya Agar, or the bondage of lust, shackles of lust. I'd like to sing a song. I don't know if Rasikananda, if we can screen this now. This is a song by Bhakti Vinod Thakur from Kalyana Kalpataru. It's a great song. I've never heard anyone in ISKCON ever sing it. I'm sure they have, and I'm not even sure of the tune, but we'll give it a bash and see what comes out. Is the meaning of this song? It's a transformation song of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. If ever you've read Kalyana Kalpataru, one of the amazing compilations of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, one of the songs in that book is also Gopinath, and there's a similar mood in that song. You can get a lot of realization by entering into the meaning of these songs. They're very important, and by singing these songs, it literally can. The more we absorb ourselves in it, the more we're, as lust means a complete absorption or coveting of some object of this world. Similarly, in Krishna consciousness, that same lust transformed, that passion towards something transformed towards a passion for hearing and chanting about Krishna, has an amazing effect. So, for instance, the first in the song called Gopinath, there's the third stanza there. It says, "I have fallen into the perils of material illusion. Wealth, wife, and sons have surrounded me, and lust has wasted me away," he says. But that's from Gopinath, and the whole song is based on that, how he's fallen into the pit of sense gratification, controlled by his, passions and so on and so forth. Pure devotees teach us this, to help us to realize, wait a minute, I am in this pit. I am lusty. I am envious. Whatever it is. Not that we become neurotic and go, depressed or something, but they also give us the solution how to deal with it. In Kalyana Kalpataru, you'll see the gradual, step-by-step, more or less step-by-step progress, how we can get free of the shackles of lust. And I don't know if this song is on the screen. I don't see it myself. Is it there, Rasikananda? It might be. I can't say. I don't see it there.
Seem to be sharing it. Hopefully everyone can see it. I can see it. Yeah.
You can see it now. Thank you very much. Is this, that's the title, okay, Mundane Lust versus Spiritual Lust. That's kind of the title of this song, at least in English, I believe. And it's from Kalyana Kalpataru. Okay, let's have the first verse. You'll take us through, and we'll see. I can't say that we're going to get the tune, happens to even the best of us, what to speak of the worst of us. Can you kindly remove my picture there so I can see the whole song? Thank you. If you want to follow, please do. Sing a line at a time and repeat. Mana tumi balabasa kametaranga. Mana tumi balabasa kametaranga. Jadakami parahari surakama seva kori. Jadakama parahari surakama seva kori. Jadakama parihari surakama seva kori. Jadakama parihari surakama seva kori. Vistaraho aprikataranga. Vistaraha aprikataranga. Manatumi balavasa kamerataranga. Manatumi balavasa kametaranga. Anitya jadiya kama shantahina abhisrama. Anitya jadiya kama shantihina abhisrama. Nahi tahi pipasara banga. Nahi tahi pipasara banga. Kama samavichayo tabutaha nahi payo. Kama samavichayo tabutaha nahi paho. Kama samavichayo tabutaha nahi paho. Kama samavichayo tabutaha nahi payo. Aileyo charita basanga. Aileyo charita basanga. Manatuma balabasa kametaranga. Manatumi balabasa kametaranga. Manatumi balabasa kametaranga. Manatumi balabasa kametaranga. Tumi seva koro jare setoma bhajite nare. Tumi seva kore jare setoma bhajite nare. Tumi seva kore jare te setoma bhajite nare. Tumi seva kora jare setoma bhajite nare. Dukadwale vinodara anga. Dukadwale vinodara anga. Dukadwali vinodara anga. Dukadwali vinodara anga. Tado tabi micha kama hayo tumi sacha kama. Tado tabi micha kama hayo tumi sacha kama. Hayo Tumi Satyanga Bhajo Vrindanerananga Bhajo Vrindanerananga Bhajo Vrindanerananga Jana Kusuma Sari Tabanitya Kale Bari Janha Kusuma Sari Tabanitya Kale Bari Janhara Kusum Sari Tabanitya Kale Bari Janhara Kusuma Sari Tabanitya Kale Bari Vyapthabi Premantaranga Vyapthabi Premantaranga Vyapthabi Premantaranga Vyapthabi Premantaranga. Back to the first verse, please. Manatumi balabasa kametaranga. 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Never go to the translation, please, Rastika Prabhu. This will be the next verse, next panel. There we go. Hopefully you can see it. And it's amazing how the great devotees, like loving parents, how they place us in our situation. Even Bhakti Vinod Thakur and many great devotees, they appear to go through parts of their life where it appears that they were also victimized or under ignorance and victimized by lust. At least according to the history, it seems like that. Internally, that's another thing. But externally, it appears they go through this. And why? To show us how we can get out of it, to give us confidence that we can become released from the shackles of material existence. We don't have to be victims of lust. And don't forget, lust is more than just uncontrolled sexual urge. Lust is the very concept of seeing ourselves in the center. And we'll hear in a minute about lust and sex and how they're related. My dear mind, he says, I've got a little thing there. I need to move it. Can I move that? Oh yeah, I've learned how to do it. My dear mind, you are so fondly attached to rolling, interesting, rolling to and fro upon the waves of lust. They're like never-ending waves, and we're just kind of in the ocean of these waves of lust, Whichever way you look, the waves are big or small, but they're nonetheless, the waves are there. Abandoning your sensual material lust, just render service in pure spiritual lust, and thus extend yourself into the realm of transcendently uncommon pastimes. Notice how the word spiritual lust is mentioned there. It is not possible to quench the thirst of this temporary mundane lust. As we heard from the drama, it burns like fire. Krishna explains how the more you feed it, the more it increases. For its nature is to continuously create a disturbing situation. It's like in the ocean. The winds, they are constantly whipping up the waves. You can't stop it in the material world. Although you desire the things associated with lust, still you cannot always get them. And even if you do get the things you lust after, you cannot keep them. For such temporary things will give up your company very soon, and that really is painful. That really is painful when we lose our body, when we lose our friends, our family, our wealth, everything, our job, our position, our good name, everything is lost. We have our karma, don't worry, to take us on. And of course, we have our unending desires to try to satisfy, as we saw from Dracula, 500 years, he still wasn't satisfied drinking blood. My dear mind, you faithfully render service to this mundane lust, but I see that it actually cannot give you anything substantial. Rather, it simply burns my entire body with miserable dissatisfaction. And I'm sure we've all had that experience. We may be carrying hangovers from those who are taking up devotional service, hangovers from previous, let's say, lifestyle, things which we used to really try to enjoy in the material world. And sometimes the hangover is there, and we sometimes try to indulge, at least on the mental platform. And we experience just how miserable it is in reality. Not only is it itself causes suffering, but it also impedes any growth or any endeavor that we may have to progress on the spiritual path. we lose our enthusiasm and so on and so forth. Even doubts may come in. So then just give up all your false material lust and accept the true spiritual lust by worshipping the Cupid of Vrindavan. He will shoot, just like Cupid shoots arrows. In this material world, we all see Cupid shooting arrows into the heart, lusty arrows. Of course, he's just acting as an instrument to fulfill our inner heart's desires. But ultimately, you could say he shoots those arrows into our heart, and we become overwhelmed, uncontrollable, desire to obtain an object of our attraction. He would, in this case, he will shoot your spiritual body full of his flower-like arrows, flower arrows. Amazing, a spiritual body full of flower arrows, and you will thereby become filled to the brim with eternal ecstatic love for him, referring ultimately the Cupid of Vrindavan is not the Cupid of this material world, be a partial expansion. Nonetheless, the Cupid of Vrindavan is none other than that flute-playing, mischievous young Krishna. So he will shoot those arrows within our hearts. So that's that song. It's a good meditation, and as I said, I've never heard anyone in ISKCON sing it, but I'm sure they have. And I apologize for the tune, which may not have been the right one, but at least we managed to remember this meditation or this writing of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So where are we? Are we lusty or not? Well, it sounded like we were. It sounds like we are. So how are we going to deal with it? And we don't have much time. Our life is a bit short, and we don't have much time this morning either. So we'll go through a few things, which our acharyas, Srila Prabhupada specifically, if we've understood the dimension or the broadness of how much lust is affecting our very lives, even as aspiring devotees, etc. How are we going to deal with this? Well, here's a funny one. This was a letter from Prabhupada. I'll start with this because it's quite a famous one, way back in 1968, to one of his disciples named Hayagriva. And Prabhupada says, because the enemy, as we heard in the Bhagavad Gita, is lust. But Prabhupada says here, regarding your enemy, Mr. Lust, I have noted, Prabhupada calls him Mr. Lust. I have noted the difficulties, but we should always remember that Krishna is stronger than any demon. And Mr. Lust, or his father, or his grandfather, nobody can do anything provided we take shelter of Krishna very tightly. So even, the whatever, the ahankar, the false identification, the ignorance that we're placed into, the misuse of our independence, etc., everything. Krishna is stronger than that. If we take shelter of Krishna, all of these demoniac, if you probably using the word here, demon, but all of these negative states of being can all be overcome, can be defeated. If we take shelter of Krishna very tightly, Prabhupada says. Now, of course, at that time, Hayagriva was hoping to get married, but Prabhupada said, one who marries for subduing lust is mistaken. Sometimes you think that's the answer. Well, it may be a necessary adjustment, just like environmental situations are very important in dealing with these, let's say, enemies of the soul in the material world. Therefore, human society is organized to make it most, say, favorable for the conditioned souls to progress step by step. It may take time, but step by step out of the shackles of lust and consequent anger and greed, envy, and all the other features which we're constantly being, affected by in this material world. Because lust cannot be satisfied simply by indulging in sense gratification. It's like trying to extinguish a fire with large amounts of petrol. It won't work. I mean, to a certain extent, maybe not petrol, I don't know, but with ghee, for instance, if you have a fire and you put a big chunk of ghee on the fire, if it's a tiny fire, it might be extinguished, but let's take a decent fire. It may go down. When you put the chunk of ghee, the fire may go down, but once the ghee heats up, the fire will blaze much more than before. So it's a little like that. Petrol probably doesn't have such a time span on it, I don't know. So to subdue lust, Prabhupada says, is a different process. Then you have to take to deity worship. Krishna is Madha Mohan. I'm sure this process, helped by your regular chanting, will kill Mr. Lust, rest assured. So, Dracula will be killed by this process of deity worship and regular chanting process. Of course, when you begin, I am at your service always and give you suggestions and ways and means to progress in deity worship, but you must immediately adopt this principle. So it's especially important. That's why Srila Prabhupada, not just the chanting of Hare Krishna, but he also introduced the deity worship in our movement. Now, deity worship may not be, it may be a different levels, no doubt. In the home, it may be very simple pictures or whatever, but that focusing everything on putting Krishna in the center, this is the point. Deity worship means putting Krishna in the center. Lust can be conquered by transforming that lust towards Krishna, or turning that lust towards Krishna. Not that we're lusting after Krishna in the sexual, with a sexual intent, so to speak, although that may also be there. We see with Kubja, that was her intent. But that's a mixed situation. But more in terms, we go to the root of lust. The root of lust is desire. Living entity by nature desires. Transforming our desires to satisfy, instead of satisfying my senses, to satisfy Krishna. That's why when we go on, we'll see how this relates to later on directions. We're going to just go through them, not necessarily in any chronological order, but some different directives Prabhupada gave us. And here's another one. This is from the Srimad Bhagavatam. If we stick to the principle of chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra offenselessly, then by the grace of Srila Haridas Thakur, we may be saved from the allurement of women. However, if we're not very strict in chanting the Maha Mantra, we may fall at any time victim to women. And that could be the opposite sex. It could be taken anywhere. It could be an attraction to any form of objects of our sense gratification. So the strict chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Kinvadavadhanudinam. Now, Rupa Goswami describes that this, and the importance of this is that we should regularly, Kinvadaram Anudinam, regularly chant and carefully chant if we want to get to the root. In the material world, generally speaking, we only try to deal with it on the surface through psychology, through therapy, through counseling. Many different features are there of dealing with abnormalities in a person's character, or what are perceived as abnormalities. And even in devotional service, we may cover it over, keeping engaged in various activities, but Mr. Lust is still there in the core of our consciousness, in our hearts. And he will be driven away. We saw how, initially at least, how Dracula was so almost terrified to see the Bhagavad Gita. It was unbearable for him, practically speaking. He could hardly look at it. We have to open our hearts. And sometimes it's said we have to be naked in front of the Lord. You know, Prabhupada even gives that example. So if a man wants to enjoy, then he has to go naked. So similarly, if we really want to experience real self-pleasure, spiritual pleasure, that may sound a bit selfish in the beginning, and it's natural. But in the more mature stage, it isn't. But even if it is the beginning stage, the process is to absorb ourselves, in hearing the holy name of Krishna, to hear the transcendental sound vibration, remembering that the name is Krishna. And remembering through deity worship also, very important, that everything belongs to Krishna, that everything should be done for the pleasure of Krishna, not myself, even our chanting. And unfortunately, we don't necessarily think like that, but even our chanting. And what does that mean? It means when we're attentive in our chanting. It's not just a mechanical pronunciation, which may also be required or valuable, but it's when we're actually sincerely. Now that attention, as we know from Srimad Bhagavatam, doesn't necessarily come so easily. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavatam, 1st canto, Sutta Goswami says to the sages, now you hear with rapt attention. But to hear with rapt attention, Prabhupada says, we have to be pure in our life, in our behavior, pure in our eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. All these things are there. Deity worship is very important to try to help us to be focused on being pure, or let's say controlling controlling our behavior, regulating our behavior. All these things are brought up later by Srila Prabhupada. Unless one is fully Krishna conscious, this lusty desire cannot be checked. It is not possible. That is tapasya. So tapasya has to be there. Austerity. Voluntary, we accept some inconvenience. Tapasa brahmacharyena. We may not be brahmachari, but Prabhupada said even grihastas are considered brahmachari grihastas when they're controlling their senses. Tapasya means first brahmachari, to avoid sex desire. That is first step. Well, that may be good when we're young, to be taught like that. Most of us were not. Where is there tapasya? There's none. In today's society, there is none. There is indulgence from the word go. From the child's birth, lust becomes pretty much the driving motivation for the education of the child, both in environmental situations, even in literal educational situations. It's very difficult to do this tapasya. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that means tapasya, restraining sex life, which in previous eras it may have been something which at least the young boys were trained in that way. But that's very difficult, Prabhupada says, in this age. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was given Harinam. If you chant Hare Krishna mantra, you'll be cured. Otherwise, regular tapasya is almost impossible nowadays. He's emphasizing regular chanting of the holy name. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, by meditation, so he recommends meditation on the Supreme Lord, focusing on, sometimes we hear the lotus feet of the Lord, the symbols on the lotus feet, the form of the Lord, whatever it is, one can overcome lust and other mental disturbances. That's 11th canto of Bhagavatam. And in the 3rd canto of Bhagavatam, it states that sex desire can be overcome by meditating on Krishna's eyebrows. Interesting, huh? I like the rainbow, you know. Very beautiful, attractive eyebrows. We get a man, I don't know about women, but men get sometimes captivated by the eyebrows of a woman. That's a fact. In the Bhagavatam in the 7th canto, it states that make plans with determination. Make plans to give up lusty desires for sense gratification. Giving up the enjoying mentality, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj says, sometimes we just have to say no. No daydreaming, visualizing all these various things that we tend to do on the objects of the senses or previous activities which we were very much infatuated with, whether it's some kind of music, sport, environment, place, whatever. The tendency is there, we tend to dwell on them. We have to be determined not to think of them. One technique of controlling is to ignore it. It may come along, we don't have to pay attention. Prabhupada says, if you don't have an unwanted visitor in the house, just don't feed them. They'll go away. So similarly with desires that come into our mind, born of our previous contact with the material world, we just don't think of it. When it comes, we don't have to dwell on it, so to speak. In the Bhagavad Gita, we can see in the 2nd chapter, a very important verse, towards the end, towards the end of the 2nd chapter there, a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Tolerance, Krishna explains tolerance. In many places, Matasparshas to Kunter, Shatoshna, Sukha, Dukkata. We have to become undisturbed and tolerate these dualities of this material world, the objects. In the 1st canto, 9th chapter, Krishna says so. Sudha Goswami says the same thing. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur recommends also, the various demons in Krishna Lila. They all personify various anarthas or various, inimical natures, etc. So Sankachuda, one of the demons Krishna killed there, he represents lust. So he said, by meditating on that pastime, it suggested that that this pastime of Krishna killing Sankachuda will help us to get free of this desire to see ourselves as in the center, as the enjoyer. In the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a very nice Samat Kumara Batukama Devad. There's a verse there where it says, Sukadeva, may Sanat Goswami protect me from lusty desires. There's a series of prayers there, I believe. Protect me from lusty desires. And Prabhupada says lusty desires are very strong in everyone. They are the greatest impediment to the discharge of devotional service. Greatest impediment, lusty desires. We may be able to carry on to a certain extent in our service, but we cannot progress as long as we're maintaining. It's not the lusty desires do not come. We see in the Upadeshamrita in the first verse of Atravegam Manasakreta Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udarpasta Vegam, etc. A Prabhupada translates here, one who's able to tolerate these desires without being disturbed. Basically, same thing in Bhagavad Gita. The tolerance is not being without them, but tolerating, not becoming a victim of them, not meditating on them, not supporting or feeding these particular desires. Therefore, those who are very much influenced by lusty are advised to take shelter of Sanat Kumar. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are so many beautiful verses. We don't have time to read so many, but here's a little bit. Be feeling ashamed of the fact, there's a feeling of repentance described there. How if you realize the futility, the fault, the unfortunate situation that we've been so long, and may still be, a victim of these lusty desires, of these material, objective desires, which pervade our consciousness sometimes. And when we feel some realization, remembrance there, we can have knowledge, remembering the results of contemplating the objects of the senses from Bhagavad Gita or from other places, or when we see the results of persons who do contemplate the object of the senses and what the ultimate result is, the pain that comes from being a victim of my Tunya Agra. So there it states, I now refuse, what Prabhupada writes, I now refuse to obey the unwanted orders of these desires. I now come to you to surrender myself at your fearless lotus feet. Same mood of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This feeling of humility, helplessness, this repentance. And in the 11th canto is also described there, very nice purport. There's an amazing verse in the 20th chapter. You should look this one up. It's 11, 20, 27 in your own time. It's a wonderful verse to give us encouragement, especially as most or many, if not most, but many devotees do fall victim to lust in their efforts to become devotees. So these verses around there's a couple of them, 2 or 3 in that area. They're very, very wonderful to give us reassurance and to help us to be patient and to be confident in moving forward in the proper way and depending on Krishna, that he can help us to overcome these say, enemies in the form of lust and so on. Prabhupada was one time asked what to do about lust. He said, you have to become Krishna conscious. Otherwise, there's no solution to this problem. There is no solution. We can try this, we can try that, but lust is everywhere. As we know in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells us where lust is. It's a good idea to know where lust is, but the real fact of the matter is in the material world, more or less, lust is everywhere except in the heart of a pure devotee. Lust is everywhere. So everywhere is a challenge. Even in a nice forest, everywhere lust is there. Maybe in a mode of goodness, but it's still there. And we have to rise above all these different modes of nature. But specifically in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna defines that there's there in the body and the mind and senses and so on, intelligence. It's good to know where the enemy is, and then we can perhaps either avoid or deal with the enemy. But the real solution is only one solution: become Krishna conscious. Whatever assists in that is only by the grace of the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada writes here, it's only by the grace of the Supreme Lord that one can be protected from the allurement of lusty material desires. The Lord gives protection to devotees who are always engaged in his transcendental loving service. So keep engaged. And even if Mr. Lust comes along, we can be protected. Yes, Mr. Lust may be very powerful in trying to draw our attention, but if we fully engage, keep ourselves engaged, the idea. And most famous, perhaps, we hear of ways of dealing with this, but this again is a subject we're not going to deal with now because it's a very deep subject. To hear the playful pastimes of Krishna with the gopis of Vrindavan. We're going to mention just one thing where Prabhupada warns us that unless one comes to a certain stage of eligibility, of purification, we have to be very careful, because sometimes hearing these very, let's say, high and spiritual pastimes of the Lord, the most intimate pastimes of the Lord, for one who is not sufficiently in knowledge and sufficiently purified, can have a detrimental effect. Because we can't compare them with mundane affairs, or even evoke within our own hearts either misunderstandings or even sensual desires in our hearts. We have to be very careful. And now we're going to finish off with the root of lust. And this we're going to take to the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 15, a very, many of you have read it. And there it deals with the spontaneous devotional service to the Lord. And right now we're on the platform, don't forget, we're trying to practice Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, which is the practical process of bringing lust, harnessing lust, and directing that lust or that passion in service of Krishna under the direction of somebody who is not controlled by lust. So this is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, engaging our senses, our mind, our intelligence, our body, everything, in the service of Krishna, and consequently whatever aptitudes are there, whatever tendencies are there, whatever desires are there, learning how to engage those in Krishna's service. And so I'm going to read a bit from that Nectar of Devotion, chapter 15. The lusty attitude of the gopis does not refer to any sort of sex indulgence. Srila Rupa Goswami explains that this lusty desire refers to the devotee's particular attitude of association with Krishna. It's an attitude. In this material world, the attitude becomes perverse in so many different directions. The attitude in this world is to satisfy me, and it becomes manifested in so many different ways in relationship with everything around us. In the spiritual realm, it's simply towards Krishna, whatever our attitude may be. Association with Krishna. Each and every individual has a different aptitude, a different nature. Every devotee in his perfectional stage has a spontaneous attraction to the Lord. This attraction is sometimes called the lusty desire of the devotee. Amazing. The same word kama is used for lust, as well as this natural attraction towards Krishna in the spiritual realm or on this planet. The lust is the devotee's excessive desire, and the material world is an excessive desire for sense gratification with me in the center. Spiritual world is the devotee's excessive desire to serve the Lord in a particular capacity. Such a desire may seem to be a desire for enjoying the Lord, but actually the endeavor is to serve the Lord in that capacity. And then, then we go on to, in the Nectar of Devotion, to the nature of the, what did we get to? Sorry, I wasn't using the right icon. There we go. The extreme desire to serve the Lord is manifest in the transcendental realm of Braj, and it is specifically manifest amongst the gopis. The gopis' love for Krishna is so elevated that, for our understanding, it is sometimes explained as being lusty desire. The author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj, has explained the distinction between lusty desire and the service attitude in this statement. Lusty desire refers to the desire to gratify one's personal senses. Transcendental desire refers to the desire for serving the senses of the Lord. In the material world, there is no such thing as a lover's wanting to please the senses of his beloved. Actually, in the material world, everyone wants mainly to gratify his own personal senses. The gopis, however, wanted nothing at all but to gratify the senses of the Lord, and there is no instance of this in the material world. Even the way they dress, everything, they want to be happy. Why? Because Krishna's happy when they see them happy. When they dress the way they do, not just the gopis, all the residents, all the pure devotees of the Lord, everything they do, the motivation is to please Krishna's senses. It's not to gain fame and name in this world. It's not to achieve any position in this world. It's not to get followers. It's not to get wealth or women. Nadanam Nijanam Sundaram. It's simply to please the supreme senses of the Lord. This is the motivation of the devotees. So whatever they do, that is their incentive. And even their dress, they may look very beautiful. You may think, oh, they're just like anyone else. They're not. It's because they want to please Krishna's senses. Of course, the most pleasing thing to the Lord is this attitude, this absolute loving attitude, which is described here as lust, because this lust ultimately refers to the natural desire of the living entity to be happy. And that happiness of the living entity is, in the spiritual words, when they see Krishna happy. So Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is the process whereby we may not know it, but whereby actually that Krishna becomes satisfied. He's pleased when he sees the sadhaka following the instructions of the pure devotee of the Lord. This pleases Krishna. And thus, in this way, lust can be conquered by the grace of Krishna. Therefore, the Gopa's ecstatic love for Krishna is sometimes described by scholars as being like lusty desire of the material world, but actually this should not be taken as literal fact. It is simply a way of trying to understand the transcendental situation. So we should try to follow in the footsteps of the Gopas. Doesn't mean imitating, it means cultivating favorably, anushilanam, favorable cultivation of this mood of bringing pleasure to Krishna. And we're going to jump forward because the time is a little short here. But in a very important verse, last point now, in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, text number 43, after describing the influences of kama or lust, Krishna therefore says, therefore Arjuna, best of the Bhartas, this text 43. Was 41. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. We conquer this insatiable, it's never satisfied, enemy known as lust by spiritual strength. And where do we get that spiritual strength? So Prabhupada says in a lecture in Bhuvaneshwar in 1977, if you want to actually have peace of mind, if we actually want to be free from this material fatiguement, then we must take the shelter of Nityananda Prabhu. Nityananda Prabhu is the strength, spiritual strength. And without spiritual strength, you cannot approach Krishna. We have to have spiritual strength, and we have to call out for Nityananda Prabhu's mercy to give us that strength. He's represented by all the pure devotees of the Lord, of course. But ultimately, he's the Adi Guru, Balaram, Nityananda. They give us this spiritual strength. So we turn to them for the strength to conquer over the insatiable enemy known as lust. Krishna says right in the beginning, we should curb this enemy known as lust. And how do we curb it? Whenever that thought comes into our hearts, we cry for the Lord's mercy. Chant the holy name loudly or whatever we can, and take shelter of Lord Nityananda, begging for his mercy to protect us. Okay, well, we're going to, because time is not very much, as we're passing time quickly, so we're going to finish off there. I do apologize. I'm not, experienced in this, presenting it in this type of format maybe, but I hope that something there from Prabhupada's words was of some.
There's 22 messages.
Oh, not many. Okay, well, thank Krishna, Krishna. That one is Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. I'm too much troubled. There's one. I'm too much troubled with the last 40 years, not helped by Hare Krishna, Hindu, Christian. Chanting not much use. Help me. Corona has helped. I mean, I don't know the details of how Corona has helped, other than the fact that we have seen that when we're in difficult situations or when we're faced with danger, when we're faced, as we mentioned earlier today, we're faced with danger always. When we're faced with danger, which is more vivid, as we have been, more or less, you could say, of late, it does sometimes help us to become a little bit more resolute in turning our hearts towards Krishna. So generally in these cases, and of course, ultimately it's the Lord who can help us, but the association of devotees, genuine association of devotees, it's not just delving only on the platform of, how to deal with this, how to deal with that, la, la, la. That may be there also, but it's actually hearing hearing purely in the association of devotees, not just trying to unravel all of our problems and all of our issues, depressions, or frustrations, anxieties, and whatever else it may be, which are inevitable at different stages of our being in this world, but to actually absorb ourselves in the pastimes, hearing the pastimes of Krishna in the association of devotees, chanting in the association of devotees, and in the association of sincere devotees. It's like when devotees would come before Srila Prabhupada, immediately, as everyone would say, it's like you come in with a bag of problems and you leave as if there was never a bag of problems in the first place. You didn't even have to mention problems practically. They would just evaporate in the presence of somebody who has no problems, who has none of this baggage. They have that amazing effect of, like the sun, the sun evaporates all dirty places. It's a matter of getting that good association. If we're really sincere about it, I'm sure that Krishna will arrange this. But if we should try to create this type of association, that was Prabhupada's desire, to try to create an environment, also not just physical association, but environmental situations which are more favorable. That's why Srila Prabhupada wanted us to have communities with simple living and high thinking. And we're living in a very complex world with many complex solutions to complex problems. And we never get, practically speaking, we don't get free of it. It's very difficult. It's one thing after another. The environment is very important also, creating a favorable environment and consequently associating favorably within that environment. So it's a big topic and time is short. And but to say, something we could deal with perhaps at another time or discuss further. But to hear in the association of devotees is the curative nivrittatar shupagimana bhavoshti chotramanobhiman gutama is to hear the messages of Krishna in the association of those who are nivrittatar, those who have they're not influenced at all by lust, by the material waves of lust. They're not influenced. They're completely above it. Then that is the Bhava Oshati. Bhava is the material ocean where we're constantly being disturbed. And when we associate with us, maybe they're less disturbed than others, a little bit of help, but it doesn't release us. We have to associate with those who are nivrittatar, those who are free of all material affinity, who have no more interest in the temporary objects of this world. Their only interest is in Krishna. I wish we could go on further, but there's a lot of other points here. If lust has such negative forces or is portrayed negatively, why was it manifested in human nature in the first place? Well, again, it's a reciprocation with us in terms it's not necessarily, it's the mode of passion. The mode of passion is the mode of action. And the living entity by nature is by nature, we're conscious, we're sentient living beings. We're looking for ways of satisfying our desires. So the mode of passion is there to give us that, you could say, impetus, that strike to endeavor, to engage in various activities. Now, the mode of passion can be very favorable when engaged in Krishna's service. The choice is there, even within the material world. It's a reciprocal arrangement of the Lord. It's how we relate to the modes of nature, not only to the modes of nature. Of course, when we're in ignorance, we just take it for granted. That's the way it is. That's the way it is. It's meant to teach us a lesson. Just like sometimes when you have a child, the child insists on having something, it's not really going to be much use to the kid, but he insists, you give it, and then hopefully he gets some realization. Maybe he doesn't, but the idea is that the child gets some realization. So the idea is that we also get some realization. And human society is meant the platform to get that realization. So therefore, in human society, the mode of passion, according to the situation we're born in, and the situation of one's nature, and so on and so forth, we may be more or less passionate in different ways. But one is regulated according to the situation of varnashram. That passion is regulated so that gradually it comes under control. Gradually it becomes favorable. Gradually we get released from what is the real lust. The real lust is the lip coming from the soul. the modes of nature are just basically fulfilling the degree of the living entity's lusty desire or passionate desire, or whatever you wish to call their animosity towards Krishna. It's reciprocal, but by good fortune, that can all change, and we can actually utilize these passionate effects which we may have according to our karma, our passionate natures, and the passionate modes of nature around us by preaching Krishna consciousness, or as Arjuna did in the great battle of Kurukshetra, Hanuman in the battle of Lanka, and so on, utilizing that passion for favorable purposes. To be engaged is meant to be engaged in Krishna's service. So it can be favorable also. It's just reciprocating, fulfilling our needs. These modes of nature are there. In the spiritual world, we could say that the only mode there is love for Krishna, but still, that passion we've just heard is there in the spiritual world. That's kama rupa, that form of kama, which is also understood to be lust. It is there in the spiritual world, but it is a love. A lust is there for satisfying Krishna's desire, eagerness, determination, how to please Krishna. So human life is to gradually evolve towards that purpose. Chanting and daily worship remains the biggest factor to control lust in this material world, at least in me. I had seen in me during the lockdown period, I do feel different. I'm still transforming in my life. Good. There's some experience there. What is there such a thing as good lust? Well, we just heard about that, transcendental lust. Good lust in this material world is just another aspect of material. Now, you may have a lusty desire or a covet to see that people in the material world are all well fed, that people are, looked after. That's the mode of goodness influenced somewhat. It's mixed, but it's still somewhat the mode of goodness. One may have a desire to, be a good person or to be elevated to a higher plane of existence and so on and so forth by performing various activities recommended in the Vedas. Vedas mainly deal with the three modes of nature, rise above them, Krishna says. But nonetheless, there is a mode of goodness there. So people will in the material world describe it as good activity. The word activity is also influenced, you could say, related to passion, or rajagun, to motivates action. Krishna's giving these a motivation for action. So there's good action, there's passion, mode of passion action, and the mode of passion where we're absolutely desiring to enjoy our present situation and get fruits from our present situation. And then there's mode of passion, mode of ignorance, activity also. But there's mode of goodness, but this is again not real goodness. Shuddha sattva means above the modes of nature, and that is when we're engaging whatever the modes of nature are influencing us, we're engaging them in Krishna's service. So thus it becomes step by step, it can become transcendental, Shuddha sattva, pure goodness. And that's the real goodness, the real passion. Passion, Prabhupada had to be passionate to preach Krishna consciousness. All the preachers of Krishna consciousness have to use passion in Krishna's service. Instead of being controlled by passion, we utilize passion in Krishna's service. Because ultimately, Daivi Heshuganamani, by surrendering to Krishna, one can overcome these modes of nature, are very hard to overcome. But by surrendering to Krishna, one can easily cross beyond them. Because Krishna personally protects the devotee, personally gives the devotee the intelligence how to do that, personally guides the devotee, etc., etc. And in the absence of or less in mature stages of awareness, of consciousness, then the devotees, the pure devotees guide us in how to do all of these things, how to engage our passion, etc., etc. Don't feed lusty and leave them, or should we replace it with more service reading? Yes, both of them simultaneously. But the positive one is, yes, to be fully engaged 24 hours a day if we can, not just trying to tolerate lusty desires. That's not our purpose. That would generally lead to Mayavada or impersonal conclusions of the absolute truth. We want to engage positively as we hear the example, when the cup is full, there's no room for anything else to enter in. We have to fill our cup with devotional activities as much as we can, and not, sometimes we spend a lot of time on the mental plane, although there are attitudes, we've heard a lot about that, this feeling of repentance, this feeling of feeling regret that, you know, we indulge ourselves for so long. Oh, maybe sometimes we become morose or depressed. Oh, I'm so useless, I can't make progress. We sometimes absorb ourselves in these things, but that's not really our business. There may be an underlying feeling of these kind of like repentant feelings, of, you know, how helpless we are. But when we're in a helpless state, the main thing we have to do is to take some shelter of something that can help us, not just, you know, something that can't, let's say, sympathizes with our helpless condition, or, you know, tries to make us feel better in our helpless condition. But no, we have to take shelter of somebody who is not, somebody who can actually help us, someone who's not in a helpless condition, somebody who's taken shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, which means devotional service, practical service at our stage, right? He said in the Bhakti, we're trying to keep engaged 24 hours a day. Yes, this is the positive way of dealing with it. But in the course of one's service, specifically in chanting, one will find that all kinds of attitudes, emotions come up in one's consciousness, but one carries on with one's devotional service. They become, actually it becomes, embellishes our devotional service. Genuine humility and genuine repentance, genuine feeling of helplessness, all manifest to increase our humility and dependence upon the Lord. Instead of meditating on ourselves, it helps us to take more shelter, just like the devotee asked about, or mentioned about coronavirus, how it's helping. So on the positive side, this helps us, and these thoughts come up. And in the presence of the chanting of the holy name, in the presence of focusing on Krishna, whatever the root of these, whatever, passions or lusts, whatever, becomes removed. In the presence of the blazing sun, all dirty things is removed. Krishna Surya Sam, Maya Haya Andhakara. How can we detect what is lust on a subtle level? Sometimes it's hard to distinguish what is more than required. For instance, desiring to make certain food items and then offering to Krishna as one. The point in making something that you yourself do not want to eat. Well, again, that's a good thing about daily worship, that, you know, there are directions what Krishna likes, how he likes, when he likes, where he likes, and so on, and how to offer it. And this helps to control our tendency to do things the way I like rather than the way Krishna likes. Now, in the beginning, you might find that's more prominent. We have to follow some level, whatever level, and ultimately on a complete level, the process given by the pure devotees of Lord, how to please Krishna, how to serve Krishna in daily worshipping the deity. And you know, you may not be able to do it in the beginning for whatever reason, but the goal is to do it in a way which is fully pleasing to Krishna. The types of preparations, how much, how many, this, that, the other is a combination. Everything is for Krishna, it's not for us. And this is where faith comes in. As we progress in our genuine faith in devotional service, we will know that Krishna will provide. Absolutely. I was listening to Sri Ram Swami yesterday, describing a little bit about their project in Hungary, and how he said, let's say there's a little difference between what we want, what we need, and what we've got. It's and they're trying to make self-sufficient community. Why? For the pleasure of Krishna, because Prabhupada wanted it. And so therefore it must be Krishna. Farm life. Krishna likes living a simple life on the land. He lives on the farm with the cows and the cowherd boys, and they live in the forest in a very simple lifestyle based on the land. So he was saying how sometimes of the year apples grow, and sometimes carrots grow, and sometimes we have wheat, and sometimes we have vegetables. It's not like, I want this, I want that. They offer Krishna whatever they can, according to the situation they're in, is offered to Krishna with love and devotion. And in this way, their life goes on very simply. They get used to it. It's not that we get so much use, I want this, I want that, I can't carry on if I don't get this. We're so conditioned, but it's not true. Krishna will provide if we do things which please him. If we try to understand what pleases Krishna. Krishna promises this in the Bhagavad Gita. Nanyas-chintayanto mam yejana paripasate. Those who have ananya, this unflinchingness, and the pure devotees have it. And if we follow the instruction, we're also in that same, you can say, the same mood, even in that same environment, even if we're not in the same consciousness. We're practicing activities which are of Ananya Bhakti, or unflinching, unmotivated devotional service. And that in that service, Krishna says, I provide what they lack and preserve what they have. So having that faith that Krishna will provide. This is how we make advancement in spiritual life, when we associate with somebody who's actually on that level of genuine selflessness, where they're not controlled by lust. What I like. Now, when you have a family with children, you do have to take that into account. You have to bear in mind the children, what they do like. You can't necessarily impose that upon children. In some environments, it may be more or less not a problem. But in general, we can't do that. We have to also bear in mind the children and the family members, depending on the circumstance. But the principle inside is we want to offer Krishna what he likes, and he will provide what we need. That's the spiritual understanding of that. So that's how we distinguish through you could say that the media of the Sadhu, Guru, and Shastra. We hear from Sadhu, Guru, Shastra. Said that Srila Prabhupada, that pure love for Krishna and same love material perverted, yes, perverted as lust. So if we don't have love towards Krishna, and love is turned as lust towards women, man, or other things in the material world, so as it is possible for devotees to keep pure love on Krishna, divert the lust on women or man, because I saw devotees are practicing Krishna consciousness for many years, chanting, serving, faith in Krishna, have love in Krishna, but still unable to control lust. Yeah, well, Krishna can control it. It's hard for us to control, that's for sure. And for sure, if after many, 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 many years, it does take time. Prabhupada also explains it takes time, baby steps, so they're required in one sense. It can happen in a second, it can take longer. There's no way of measuring it in terms of time. It depends to our degree of surrendering to Krishna. And we cannot say what's going on in particular individuals' hearts. We may know our own heart. We're not going to, pinpoint others, but we can look at our own heart, and we can see in our own heart, to what degree am I being sincere? To what degree am I being, serious about my practice of spiritual life? There's usually some good reason for it. It's not just a matter of that's the way it is, Babu. Sorry about that. And there's usually a good reason, or let's say a definable reason why. It may be the quality of our chanting. It may be certain interactions with other devotees. It may be we're purposely harboring various sensual activities, etc. We're not revealing our hearts. Revealing our hearts in confidence in the right association is extremely important. When we hear classes, it's kind of general, and things just kind of like blow over, and we go about our lives. Association, Bhakti Siddhanta would put much emphasis on the degree of our association with matter and spirit, how much we're associating with materialistic persons or materialistic subject matters, how much we're associating with spiritual persons and spiritual subject matters. Very, very important. But I would like to add in that situation a very important point of the confidential association of devotees, where we can genuinely share and reveal our hearts, not in a way as to, let's say, indulge in some kind of mental or physical sensing, but rather how to rectify, how to change our hearts. Taking the right, it is important to have this association if you want to advance in Krishna consciousness, the association of more elevated devotees, and in their association to hear and chant, and to reveal our hearts at the right time, and not be hiding. Don't hide things. Oftentimes it's fear or some whatever it may be, or attachment, these various things we don't want anyone to know about. We're hiding something in our hearts, and mechanically we're carrying on externally. But mechanical devotional service in the beginning is tremendous, but if we carry on doing the same thing or lesser thing after so many years, we have to stop and think, maybe I'm doing something's not right here. There's something within, or there's something going on here which needs to be adjusted. And we need the association of devotees sometimes to find out what it is. We have to be willing to hear it. We have to be willing sometimes to be exposed or to be corrected. It's painful, maybe a little painful. Like a tooth which is going rotten and we're not dealing with it after so many years. We're brushing it, we're putting something on it, but it's the root, not to the surface. We sometimes, these situations when we're carrying on for many years like this, it means that Krishna is now telling us, he's telling us something. Come on, you've got to go deeper than this. It's not a surface business. We've got to get under the surface. We've got to dig deep. If you want the jewels, you've got to dig underground. You've got to dig deep in the consciousness and clear out the roots of these dirty things. If you don't see the dirty things, if you don't know, then you will not think of clearing them. In the beginning, we chop them down, you don't see them. Then they start growing up because the root is there. So now we have to get right to the root. Kechit kevalya bhaktya vasudeva prana gandhan tvansikasnena niharam eva bhaskara. It's very rare that such a great soul, but we have to get that opportunity. We have to take that opportunity to hear from Srila Prabhupada, read his books carefully, and follow the process he's given, but also associate with devotees and churn this subject matter and dig deep to see how our consciousness is purified. There's some sound vibrations coming in. There's tons more messages. This is going to go on for a long time. I don't know what Padmanabha, what you want to do. It's already 1 o'clock. I don't know what you want to do, Prabhu. There's a lot more questions, apparently. It seems like lust. I always felt all along that, you know, this lust is the basic challenge that we all face on all levels, not just on the level of sexual interaction, but in our dealings and so many things. And it seems like so many devotees have a lot of, let's say, questions or some comments or something. I don't know. What do you want us to do, Padmanabha?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the very insightful class. And yes, it's like you mentioned, a very big topic. We're having lots of questions. So there's still a lot of questions. I think, yeah, we'll have to probably end soon. So I don't know if we can arrange for a second part to the seminar if you're interested. Whenever, you know, later on in August. I think that would be really nice. Because like you said, it is a very big topic, and you know, we had lots of devotees joining today, so I'm sure everyone's found it really helpful. I found it helpful as well. So yeah, we can continue at a later date. Does that sound okay?
Possible, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Maharaj, very much.
You can't guarantee anything in this world, but you can. By Krishna's will, back to his Hanuman said, by Krishna's will.
Yes, Krishna willing. Krishna willing, we can arrange for another seminar in the near future. I can make a note of the questions. Well, I can save the chat, and then maybe next time we can start with the questions that we haven't managed to answer, if you wish.
Yeah, sure. I don't. Maybe there's not so many questions. It might be a lot of comments down there.
Comments. Okay.
A lot of comments actually. There's not so much.
There's 4 or 5
questions. 4 or 5, as you wish. Otherwise, you know, I think that most of the devotees, you know, we probably asked similar questions on several occasions in different certain scenarios, and the questions, answers are all there in Prabhupada's books. We just have to hear in the right association, and you know, get to understand how to apply the answers in our lives. But everything's there in Prabhupada's books. All the answers to these questions are there in different places. At different stages we may see or not see, and at different stages the nature of the of the answer is the same. But I mean, the degree of the application may vary at different stages of our lives. You know, getting married, brahmachari, and so on are one simple aspect of that. But even then, internally at different stages, different instructions are more relevant. But they're all there in Prabhupada's books. Yeah. How do we constantly meditate on everything for Krishna, nothing for me? Well, it's not that nothing's for me. Krishna reciprocates also as you reciprocate with Krishna. Krishna certainly makes you, if the more we're feeling in that mood, the more Krishna we feel happy. Krishna gives us happiness within. And how is that done? Well, again, same thing. is by keeping, Prabhupada said, your love for Krishna is shown by your love for me, and by devotees doing that service to please Prabhupada. This means we're pleasing Krishna. This says that pleasing our spiritual master, trying to fulfill his mission or serve his mission or their mission. Means this is pleasing Krishna. It's not like one's different to the other. This is how we move, or how we evolve into the environment or the atmosphere of pleasing Krishna, always by thinking how I can always keep engaged according to my spiritual master's instruction. Trying to see. Understand to surrender Krishna, overcome all lust. At the beginning of practice, what are the symptoms of surrender? What are the activities to surrender? When we say the beginning of practice, it depends how much we mean by the beginning. We could still be beginners, or we might mean right at the beginning, right at the very beginning. It might be like Dracula. He just somehow or another took some prasadam and liked it, and then came to the Sunday feast, and this is surrender. And the next time, the whole process of surrender is given by Rupa Goswami as, Agata Sukriti is the unknowing surrender, of course, unknowing devotional service. The whole process of devotional service is step by step, unfolding one by one process of surrender to the Supreme Lord, which is mainly evoked by association. Desire from our side, but that desire will lead to association of devotees at every stage. It's not just in the beginning. Prabhupada said it, every stage in our devotional service, the association of devotees is most essential. But to progress beyond bhajana kriya, Vishwanath Chakravarti very nicely describes this process. It's absolutely essential that by associating with devotees who are on the Kanista platform, the beginning platform of devotional service, one can only practice bhajana kriya. But to rise above bhajana kriya, we have to actually associate with those, at least on madhyam, more advanced devotees. Now that association doesn't only come physically, it can come from actually taking seriously the mood, the behavior, the instructions, the impetus, everything from those devotees. Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes that in Bhakti Aloka, how by associating with these advanced devotees, one develops the necessary courage, determination, satisfaction to progress further in devotional service, just by hearing about them, hearing about their instructions of these great personalities of the Lord. So association is very, very important. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the enlightening words, nice, wise words, really helpful for us. So thank you for all the devotees for joining. So I'll end the meeting now. So Vanchakalpatarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhayavacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Galaxy tab is waiting for Hare Krishna, that's all right. Thank you. Hare
Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Hare Bol.
Hare Bol. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Sorry, Galaxy Tab S2 didn't get your question there. So you can send us Galaxy Tab S2's question.
Sure, I'll have a look for it.
I've got it in front of me.
Oh, okay.
Quality of vice. It's about duality. It should have some duplicity. Long one. Hare Krishna. Duplicity. Yeah, it certainly is connected with lust, duplicity. Trying to fulfill one's own motivations or intentions, or cover them over, so you come over to others as something you're not. Duplicity is behaving somewhere different to where we're actually at. Or what people perceive of where we're at is a dishonesty, we could say. So yes, for sure, it's related to lust. It is in one sense. So that duplicity is sometimes described, Bhaktisiddhanta particularly describes it as the greatest obstacle. It's a form of lust, which is because it blocks the opportunity to clear up to get to the actual problem itself. We're blocking it. We put a block there. The door's closed. So we have to open that up. How to open up that city? How to become free of that? Well, Krishna helps. Sometimes we're put in a situation where we're almost exposed. Sometimes that happens to people. They get exposed in life. And they try to defend themselves till they're defeated. So we're like in that situation. We're all in that situation of a tier wood. And really, we're all in that world of duplicity because we're calling ourselves something we're not. We're hiding the truth, knowingly or unknowingly. So as devotees, this will come up step by step by step. And we have to be willing to this was humility, I suppose. We have to be willing to, let go and not be so attached to our preconceived ideas or our conditional ideas, and let go. And that's the value of sadhu sangha in the association of devotees. It'll come up, and if we don't like it, of course, then we may go away. We're not sincere yet, or whatever it may be. We may drift away or keep away. We're afraid of being exposed. We want to be exposed. To Krishna can see everything. It's to Krishna. We don't want to hide anything from Krishna. The gopis, if it pleases Krishna to hide something, but otherwise they have nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide. They're simply live for Krishna's pleasure. Whatever you want to do, Krishna, read the Sikshastakam regularly. Different things that might help to wake us up, to realize that. Read Prabhupada's books. You will see that this is just. Why am I hanging on to this duplicity? Why? We don't need to. It's causing us suffering. It's causing us maintaining our lives in this material world, lifetime after lifetime. Let go. And this again, chanting with devotees, Yuga Dharma, Harinam Sankirtan, chanting, kirtan. Lots of kirtan can help wake us up, enlighten us within, free us from this duplicity of existence, duplicitous behavior. Anyway, that's another topic which we'll have to leave for now. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much. Go Haribol. Thank you, Padmanabha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
No, thank you very much. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you.
Safely.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Haribol. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, dear.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj.